So the time is 10:13. I call this meeting of the Air Conditioning Advisory Board. The time is 10:13, and just a couple of um, housekeeping rules. Keep your mic muted at all times until if you're speaking, and also make sure, since we are in video conference, that we say your name first. So with that said, we'll Ms. Lynn, will you call roll?
Okay, Mr. Dolores Campion?
Present.
The camera on. Okay.
Mr. Jerry Bittner?
Oh, yeah, there. I can hear you.
Present.
Keep it red, right? Okay, thank you. And then when you do say here, you didn't just say here.
Celia, I'm sorry. We are having that background
you.
noise. And I'm thinking I'm hearing our other member trying to get on. Okay. Are we good now?
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay.
Robert Stanley?
Here, present.
Ms. Flor Lujan? Ms. Flor Lujan, can you unmute?
Yes, here.
Mr. David Morris?
Here.
And Mr. Dave Yelovic?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
All right, we're going to move on to item C. And item C is Ms. Winston.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. As we all know, this meeting is being conducted by a video conference. The public is watching via live stream, and that's on our YouTube channel. And anyone who signs in to make public comment will have a chance to do so. However, for this meeting, we do not have anyone that has signed up to make public comment. The meeting is being recorded and again is available on YouTube channel now and later after the meeting. Here's some tips to make sure we have a successful meeting. Keep your microphones muted until you'd like to speak. It cuts down on that background noise. Please put all phones on silent and turn off any sources of noise in your workspace. We want to avoid, if at all possible, I sound like a kindergarten teacher, but it's true, a lot of fidgeting around because we have folks watching and it just makes for a smoother meeting for everyone. State your name before you begin to speak. Raise your hand if you would like to speak. I do feel like an elementary school teacher, but we need to do that. This feature, we're on WebEx and there is a hand raising feature. But while we're conducting the meeting, Mr. Campion, as chair of this meeting, may miss that. Staff, we may miss that. But if we see your hand go up, we'll know that someone has something to say. Make sure it's visible in your video feed, and the presiding officer will call on you. If you have any problems connecting during the meeting, try to let the presiding officer know. We have staff working in the office to assist with any connectivity issues. Stay on camera during the meeting, even if you're not speaking. If you need a recess, presiding officer, let him know. Raise your hand so it's visible on the camera. Make that request. We can always pause. If you get inadvertently disconnected from the meeting, rejoin the meeting using the same link used to join the meeting initially. We have had several video conference advisory board meetings at this point. Using this new medium, we know that we may have a few awkward moments or minor blips. No worries. It's totally normal. It's acceptable. It's fine. We're navigating new territory. We will deal with these in real time and take a small recess if we need to. These possible blips are anticipated and they're okay. We will adjust. We'll go through the agenda items and we will take care of everything that we need to act on today. Thank you everyone for participating, and Mr. Campion, turning the meeting back over to you.
Dolores Campion, thank you, Ms. Winston. And we're going to move on to agenda item D, approval of the minutes. Let's see, let me read this little script really quick, make sure I get everything correct. Ask for any discussions from any of the members in reference to the meeting from the minutes from our previous meeting. Do we have any discussion? All right, I take that, this is Dolores Campion. I take that as a no. So let's move on to, do I have a motion to approve the meetings as written?
Rob Stanley, I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Dave Yelovic, second.
Dolores Campion, I have a
Jerry Bittner, I second the motion.
I have a motion. I have a second. This is Dolores. All in favor say yes, yay.
Yes.
Yes. Rob Stanley, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Dolores Campion. Ms. Delia, will you take roll call?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Dolores Campion,
Yes.
Mr. Jerry Bit,
Yes.
Robert Stanley,
Yes.
Flor Lujan,
Yes.
David Morris,
Yes.
and Dave Yelovic.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Campion?
Motion,
Mary
Dolores
Winston.
Campion, motion carries to approve the minutes as written. And so now we move to item E. And I'm sorry, I'm looking down. I probably need to look at the camera. I'm reading these notes here. So we move on to item E, which we have no public comment. So we'll move on quickly to item F.
Mr.
Mr.
Campion,
Campion, before we move to item F, Mary Winston, I just wanted to add something that I did neglect to add when I was giving the initial discussion. For all votes during this meeting, we're going to do, as Ms. Luna just did, a roll call vote because the voices kind of get scattered and we don't know who said what. And I did forget to say that. We've handled it appropriately and we're going to have a chance to vote now. So I just want to make sure that that's clear for all of our members. Sorry about that. Thank you.
and Mr. Campion, just to clarify, I did mark Robert Stanley as making the motion and it was seconded by Dave Yelovic. Is that correct?
That is correct. All right, so now we can move on to item F, discussion of possible recommendations for proposed amendments to the existing rule of at 16 Administrative Code. And we'll let Mr. Who's taking on that?
I'm doing that. Doug Jennings.
Mr. Jennings.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Officer Campion. Hello to everyone, our members and staff in attendance. Again, Doug Jennings, Assistant General Counsel for the department. I am going to share my screen real quick so we can see the rule. We are engaging in the first step of rulemaking to update the applicable codes for the air conditioning and refrigeration program. In just a moment, I will kick it over to Bill Weatherly to discuss some of the technical aspects. This is an exercise we go through every 3 years to update the codes. You will see on your screen the underlined text is new language, and you'll see that the language that's struck through is the old language. So effective January 1 of next year, we would like to adopt the following applicable codes to apply to air conditioning and refrigeration work performed under the Chapter 75 of the Occupations Code, 1302 of the Occupations Code. So we have the 2018 International Residential Code, International Mechanical Code, and International Fuel Gas Code, as well as the 2018 Uniform Mechanical Code. The one thing that looks a little bit different about this rule draft you'll see is in subsection A5, which will make applicable the addition of the International Energy Conservation Code adopted by the State Energy Conservation Office. And the reason why we can't just adopt a given addition of the IECC in this rule is because the State Energy Conservation Office, SECO, actually has statutory authority to adopt the IECC for the state. So we really don't have the authority to specify an addition, a particular year for that code. But currently, SECO has adopted the 2015 IECC, so that's currently in their rules. And so the idea is moving forward, at least until the next time we update this rule, the 2018 versions of the IRC, IMC, fuel gas code, and mechanical code will be in effect, and whatever addition is currently in effect as specified by SECO. So that's just a little bit different look than you may have seen before, because those statutory changes that gave SECO that authority are relatively new. And scrolling down, you'll just see in subsection B, I'll put it in the center of the screen, just says the 2015 codes, which are currently in effect, will remain in effect through December 31st of this year, and that all air conditioning and refrigeration work permitted or started before January 1 can be completed in accordance with the 2015 code additions. And just as a reminder, these codes are applicable in areas outside a municipality or in a municipality that has not adopted a code. And Bill will have some statistics and data for you in a minute about which codes are in effect in most of the municipalities statewide. So just from a rulemaking perspective, right now, this is your first look at this draft rule. Normally, we would like to put together a work group to come up with this rule, but given all of the kind of chaos that has ensued this year, that we're all very familiar with, we decided let's go ahead and put this draft rule together, have our own program specialists analyze the codes for any changes, and just get these codes updated on our usual 3-year schedule. They're just, because of all of the disruption due to COVID, we didn't have time to do our normal process. But what we'll ask you to do today, board members, is to approve the publication of this rule. If there are any changes that need to be made, you may certainly specify those, but we would like to ask you to for permission to publish these rules to open the 30-day comment period. As you're familiar, once we get those comments, we will bring the draft rule back to you for a second look, and then ask you to recommend adoption of this rule by our commission. And I'd like to pass the meeting briefly over to Bill Weatherly. Let me see if I can figure out how to stop sharing. There we go. I'd like to pass the meeting to Bill Weatherly, our Chief Program Specialist in the Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Program. Bill?
Well, good morning, advisory board and staff. This is Bill Weatherly. I'm the program chief for air conditioning and refrigeration for TDLR. And thank you, Doug. It was very good. And what we're doing is moving, as he said, to the 2018 codes. Now, the 2018 ICC codes and Uniform Mechanical Code were actually published in the spring of 2018. History, at TDLR, we have remained one code cycle behind. And we've done this, but just to give the industry a chance to catch up. When I was in business, I would always look at I didn't have my nose in all the rules all the time. I was running a business, but every code cycle, you need to look and see how that affects your business. So I think they've had plenty of time, over 2 years, to do that. When a new code cycle comes, and we do look at it to see if there's anything that's safety related or something that's very pressing, and we might want to in the future adopt a new code earlier if there are some pressing safety issues. We did not see that this time. A lot of the changes are administrative, chapter wise. There's some definition changes. There are some things that the industry needs to know about, as they're going forward with their business. But like I say, it has been over 2 years there. So as Doug said, the only code that we can't adopt ourselves is the International Energy Conservation Code, because the SECO, the State Energy Conservation Office, has the authority on that. They adopted the 2015 code in 2016, so they've had that adopted for a while, and they have in their bylaws, they can actually go to the 2018 code when we go in January of 2021 coming up. We don't know if they will do that, but they will be able to do that. Just a little bit of my research here. I have to, and I think it's important for me to know what the cities throughout Texas are doing and what they've adopted. You know, in our rules, the municipalities, which are the authority having the jurisdiction, they need to have their codes at least as stringent as what the state has adopted. However, a lot of the cities are a little behind on that, and so with the help of a nonprofit energy conservation organization called SPEAR, don't know what all means, but they are very active in energy conservation. They're a coalition. They also work with SECO, the State Energy Conservation Office. And so I was talking to them yesterday and just kind of looking through the cities, and in a list of about 426 cities in Texas. Now, that's not all the cities. I don't think there's Cut and Shoot in there or some of those smaller cities, but we looked at it, and so far there are already 89 cities throughout Texas that have adopted the 2018 code in their bylaws. 258 are still on the 2015 code, and there's 79 cities that are on the 2012 code still. And then there are a few cities that are behind, that way. So that just gives you an idea, of how the cities and the municipalities are going. So we would like to stay consistent. If we adopt these rules and we go ahead with it on January 1st, 2021, then we will be consistent as one code cycle behind. So at this point, I will open it up for comment or discussion.
Dolores Compion, I do have a question, sir. In reference to the last comment, and in reference to certain cities being on the 12 and the 15 and the 18, from a compliance standpoint, maybe this is more of a statement than a question.
Sure.
The municipality always will have jurisdiction over that indifference. Is that correct? Incorrect?
Well, it's a hard thing to manage, and they are the authority having jurisdiction. They are the permitting authority, okay, and the inspection authority, and of course we work through complaints and when things come up that way. So, for instance, if we did have a complaint in a city, and then our investigating department went out and looked at that, let's say it was mechanical integrity, and they came to me to look at that and make a decision, the state could overrule if they were on the 2012 code and there was something important that's in the 2015 code. They're required to be at least stringent as the state adopted codes. Now they can be more restrictive, an example, the city of Austin had some things in there when I was doing business here that were more restrictive than the codes. So, but it's not something that we're able to do, to go out and police that. So I think most cities are doing a very good job. And if we have complaints coming up, then we'd look at the code that we're on. And also, like Doug said, in an unincorporated area, it would be the code adoption that the state has adopted. So if that answers your question.
Dolores Compion, yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? I see Mr. Yelovich has his hand up.
Hi there. Thank you. Yes, Dave Yelovich. I was wondering, I read through this a bunch of times. This is kind of like the first time since SECO adopted their rules that we've had to try and align the codes here. And I've just got some fundamental issues that could potentially cause a lot of chaos in the state of Texas. SECO can only adopt this rule once every 6 years. We're trying to amend this every 3 years, so we'll never really line up with SECO. By adding number 5 there, that's what kind of causes some issues, because SECO, like you mentioned earlier, is on the 2015 codes. The way the SECO rules read, paraphrasing, is that for 1 and 2 family dwellings, we use the energy provisions of the 2015 IRC. That's Chapter 11 of the IRC in 2015. By adopting these rules, right there it says the 2018 International Residential Code. So me as a builder, I will be under SECO rules building to 15, under these rules to 18. So there's some conflict there. The SECO rules also go on to say that any other residential work and commercial work shall be to the 2015 IECC. Again, there's the conflict. That one says 2015, and we're saying 2018. I can see where outside of a city, because a city does rule, I agree with that. But outside in unincorporated areas, you won't know what code you're building by. I'm wondering if we should perhaps study how we adopt codes if we're going to try and align them with what SECO is doing. Because I guess in theory, every 3 years we could be thrown into chaos because they won't line up. Does that make sense?
Well, it does make a little sense. Now, it's something that we can research. SECO is more concerned with the Energy Conservation Code. That's what they dig into, and that's what they're more concerned with. And then this also applies to the cities as well. The authority having jurisdiction where they're at. So I can't answer your question now. With the help, maybe Doug can help me if it's that important to line up with the IRC, IMC, and the IFGC, the International Fuel Gas Code, the other codes. And we can reach out to SECO as well. But you bring up a good point. We can certainly research that.
Because my concern as a home builder would be if I'm building a house out in the county somewhere, away from a city,
right?
And for whatever reason, it goes to a lawsuit, and someone's up there and they say, well, sir, what code did you follow to do this work? And there's technically 2 correct answers, I guess. So it would be somewhat weird to have that situation. I think we should have one way of doing things and have it concrete. I follow this code, and that's the way it should be. I was wondering if Doug could comment.
Yes, David, did you have, sorry, I saw your hand.
So I may have a little bit of insight because I do, David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director, because we've gone through these exercises, we've even shown up to the SECO meetings for the discussion. Mr. Yelovich, you bring up a valid point. What we found in most instances, not all, and I would defer to Mr. Weatherly on the comparison, if you comply with the 2018 code requirements, then you're going to be good with the prior 2015 code requirements. So if we move forward with the 2018 code requirements, and there's requirements that require the energy efficiency with 2015, you're going to be okay as long as you're with the current codes that we're adopting, and it should take care of those issues. Now, that isn't always the case. Sometimes there are code cycles or code iterations that reduce requirements. And I put that out there for the discussion because I know Mr. Weatherly is wrestling with things that we wrestle with every 3 years whenever we're looking at code cycles. And also the advisory board members may have some more insight on this as well. So I just put that out there for further discussion.
Yeah, this is Bill Weatherly, Program Chief again. As I have tried to compare the codes, and I also have some comparison spreadsheets that I can share with any of the members if you'd like, can send it to you. A lot of the things in the 2018 code have relaxed a few issues there. I didn't see a lot that was more stringent. So if you're following the 2018 codes, you're going to be good with SECO. You're going to be good with the 2015 codes as well. But it's still a very good point, and we'll certainly research it some more.
Yeah. Because it is possible, Dave again, it is possible that SECO comes out in 2021 and adopts the 2021 energy code, which is leaps and bounds ahead of any code we have right now. So there could be some great discrepancies in the future.
I agree with that, and that is a possibility. They, as you said, they're on a 6-year cycle, and so 2021 is when they can adopt new codes. And at least we should reach out to SECO. What I've seen before, respectively, is that that SECO is more focused on the Energy Conservation Code more than the other codes. And we use them as a resource a lot of times when we have some energy code questions that way. But I understand your situation there. I certainly do. You want something consistent and to know that there's not going to be any conflicts. And you know, none of us like litigation, but that is a real situation at times. So I'll defer back to Doug a little bit, but Doug, I think we could certainly contact SECO and we can have more discussion on this.
I certainly believe we could. Thank you, Bill. Again, oh, sorry, Ms. Lujan.
Hi, Flor Lujan. I do agree with, kind of being consistent as well with the codes. It is, I guess, confusion when it comes as a contractor, also with the city, working with the city, and also third parties, which everybody's on a different code. The city never says I'm adopting this code. And I think as contractors, we just adopt the city codes. But then most of the time, there's always a confusion between also third parties and city inspectors, where we don't agree or agree to disagree.
Thank you. Again, Doug Jennings. I think one of the issues that this has really highlighted is the need for some clarification in the statute, perhaps. When we look at some of our other programs, electrical, for example, there's a provision in the statute that says, our commission shall adopt the National Electrical Code as the electrical code for the state. That clarifies things. Here we have a grayer area. And I agree completely that now I don't think that the statute placing SECO in charge of of adopting the IECC was intended to displace other industries and to kind of be larger. But there is interplay between the codes and among the codes, and we can't help that. One thing that I was going to ask for some guidance on here from the board is whether removing. I will share the screen real quick so you can see it. Is whether removing subsection A5 here might help with clarify the rule a little bit. Really, A5 is just there as has an informational purpose. It's to say, oh, by the way, the IECC applies, but its version is mandated by some other law. We are still, when we are doing investigations, we're still going to employ the IECC and look at the IECC to the extent that that it applies. We just are not in control of the version that's in effect. And so maybe I'm just wondering, and just guessing here, like your input, if maybe A1 through 4 are sufficient and we just remove the reference to 5, or if everything is still necessary.
I would be more comfortable without number 5. This is Dave. I don't know if you can see me with the screen there.
Okay.
Number 5 kind of puts things into a tizzy. We've never had that before. And by adding it, I think it adds a lot of questions.
Okay. And that was our attempt to try to make that issue clearer and kind of state that we didn't want to overstate our own agency's authority, because we see SECO pretty clearly has authority to adopt the IECC statewide. And that was just kind of an attempt to get that out there. But I do see how it confuses things. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that issue?
This is Bill Weatherly, Program Chief. I would be good for that. I think it was good that you had it in there for discussion, Doug, so everybody's on the same page and knows this. But I would be good with taking it out. It is a bit confusing.
David.
David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. Mr. Weatherly, I just want to make sure, if we were to strike A5, does that create any concerns or consternation regarding the manual J calculations or any of the calculations necessary when we go to do those calculations? Are there any references to the IEC code that we would make use of if we were to take that out?
There would, unless we could, this is Bill Weatherly again, there would, unless we could defer back to the SECO and the adoption of the whichever code that they did for the IECC. Now, definitely, the IECC has impact, and it's also mirrored in the International Residential Code as well in one chapter there. So yes, I think, and I would have to look at that and see if it's mirrored exactly, but a lot of that is in the IRC. Where it comes commercial wise, the UMC, now that's another question on that. I'd have to look at that as well, the energy part. But definitely Manual J, references a lot of that.
And this is Doug Jennings again. I think one of my thoughts here is that, the inclusion of that A5 wasn't necessarily. We use the IECC, the applicable edition, as a reference, but we are not the body that is adopting it necessarily. So my feeling about it is, even if A5 were to disappear, we would still apply the 2015 IECC as the energy conservation code for the state. So, like I said, I included that in the draft just to be very clear, as an informational purpose. It's not so legally binding as 1 through 4, because 1 through 4 are within our purview and our authority, and A5 is really a cross reference to some other authority. So, at least in my opinion, if we remove that, we are still going to use the 2015 IECC as applicable for any of our functions.
Mayra, el pollo de Jaime, lo mandaste sin pollo.
Is anyone opposed to removing A5? Does anyone think that it serves a function and should be kept?
Well, this is Bill Weatherly again. I'm thinking this through, and I believe we need a reference to it in some way. It could be worded differently, Doug. I'll ask for comment from Dave Yelovich too, but I think we need a reference to that as going forward if I'm looking at reviewing a case.
Now, I will remind you that and I will share it again. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to show you the text of Rule 75-100. And if you can see where my mouse is, E standards, E2, the standard for practice of air conditioning or refrigeration in an area where no code has been adopted is, and it has the applicable edition of the IECC. And then we see another reference to the applicable editions of the IMC, IFGC, and IECC again here. And so the applicable edition, at least in my reading, would be that adopted by SECO, which would be 2015. But I understand, once again, there may be some complications with maybe municipalities adopting different versions. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that language about the applicable IECC appears in another rule as well.
This is Dolores.
Dave Yellen. Oh,
well, that's everybody made some great points, and I was thinking the same thing. Me as a small contractor, me following the 18 is the easy way to go. But if I'm a large contractor doing volume, where a cost does become a consideration and litigation comes a consideration, that now we need to be a little more consistent with more of an investigative piece, where this is the rule that I'm following, versus maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. And so, but it does reference it in another part of our rules that the ICC doesn't specifically say what code. I think that's implied, where we go, well, we're using the 15, or the 21 or 18 or whatever the year is. But it does show reference. I think what I'm hearing on this end is what to eliminate any subjectivity. Should a reference be inputted or should it not? Is that what I'm hearing at this point?
Mr. Compion, Mary Winston here. As we move through, I did see at one point Mr. Stanley and Mr. Bidner had their hands up. They're not up now, but I just wanted to make sure if they still wanted to speak or if this has been handled, their issue's been handled during the discussion. And Mr. Stanley's hand is going back up.
This is Rob Stanley. All I wanted to say is that if, that's, to me, that's just guiding somebody to the 15 code, IECC code or whatever. It's really not, we as this board are not adopting that. It's just giving somebody a guidance to that. So it's part of the state law, so it's going to have to be followed no matter what code we're on. I think it would help people to know, to be able to read the mechanical code, TDLR's code on mechanical, to give them the idea that, okay, if we're in an unincorporated area, we do need to go to SECO and actually follow whatever their listed code is as far as the energy and the mechanic or the manual JDNS and all that good stuff too. So I think it needs to stay on there to give you guidance of where to look for the energy code. So that's my 2 cents.
This is Bill Weatherly, ACR Chief. The concern I have is, can we still enforce the IECC without it being in there? Or would there be complications in enforcement of the Energy Conservation Code if we didn't have it in our rules? So I'll defer that maybe back to General Counsel.
It's Dave again.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the SECO rules are state law already. Even though they're not in our rules, I think we could still imply that people have to follow that. Just to go back to another point that was made earlier, if I'm remembering, now Doug may have to look this up for us, but I believe me as a builder, 1 and 2 family dwellings that I do, the state SECO can only update the energy code every 6 years. For commercial work and other like multifamily, they can update it every 3 years. And again, we're kind of in the middle of this first cycle where it could be where residential is on one code and commercial's on another code. And by referencing number 5 here, we throw the whole thing into confusion. That state law is already there. I think we should leave it over there in the code where it is. When we reference 1 through 4, it's very clean, it's very succinct, and we don't muddy the waters. Number 5 throws a whole question into it. So I just move that Doug proposed dropping number 5. I'm all for that.
Again, Doug Jennings, thank you, Mr. Yelovic. Looking at Rule 75, I believe it was 75-100 that puts out the substantive standards that says, the standard for the practice of air conditioning and refrigeration is, the applicable edition of the IRC, the IFGC, and the IECC. I think the applicable edition of the IECC is going to be that adopted by SECO, whether or not we state it in our rule. At the same time, I do agree that including it in the rule is certainly a useful cross-reference. And so, the question we're grappling with is, including that cross-reference, does that muddy the waters for people such that removing that cross-reference would make everything just clearer for everyone? I don't think it's going to impact our authority either way, including it or removing it. Now, if we would like to keep A5 as as the cross-reference, as the informational piece that it is, there are things that we can do on our end. If we go ahead and publish these rules, we can go ahead and communicate further with SECO and talk about this issue and try to give you a better roadmap. And maybe talk about it at our second meeting. We'd be happy to do that. We'll have a little more research and information for that. I think we'll do that either way. Now, just looking forward looking forward in our rulemaking process, if we remove A5 today, later on, if we would like that reference to stay in, if our commission, for example, wants that reference to stay in, we'll have to start this process all over again. I'm not so sure that we would have to restart the process if we keep A5 in today. But I do think it might require republication. I'd have to defer to our rulemaking experts on that, but that's just one potential roadblock that we might see down the road if we remove that provision today.
Doug, this is Mary Winston again. Mr. Bittner, were you sure? I saw your hand pop up one more time. I just wanted to make sure that you had got an opportunity to speak if you wanted to.
It's Jerry Bittner. My question had nothing to do with the issue currently being discussed. It had to do with question perhaps directed to Mr. Weatherly, who might be able to explain it. Does anyone know the reason that we have the adoption of two mechanical codes, both the uniform and the international code?
This is Bill Weatherly, Program Chief. Yes, the Uniform Mechanical Code is kind of the granddaddy code. It's been there forever before ICC and IRC and all the ICC codes. And it is actually more focused on commercial installation than it does have a residential portion, but it's, and it also, the Uniform Mechanical Code is heavily plumbing in that, in the UMC. And so that's the reason. I mean, it's, they're competing codes, ICC and IAPMO, that has the Uniform Mechanical Code and updates it. But because there are some cities that specifically adopt the Uniform Mechanical Code, Austin is one of them, and that's why we keep it in there. And it's a reference. But it is, I'll agree, it is more focused toward commercial, which that is part of what we do. Residential and commercial. But that's my best answer. Will it change in some point? I don't know. But the that's why we still have it.
Jerry Bittner. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I kind of thought that that's what it might be with individual municipalities. The only other comment that I have is that I'm aware of several significant conflicts within the two codes. And so, similar to what Mr. Yelovich is talking about, when you have two competing codes that have different procedures, different methodologies, different types of details that are allowed, and there's a conflict that comes up, how do the contractors resolve that?
Well, this is Bill Weatherly again. In my 2 years here that I've been here, 42 years in the industry, but 2 years here at TDLR, I've not really seen the conflict in the air conditioning side, but I'll agree there are many conflicts on the plumbing side, and there could possibly be some on the air conditioning side. So it is something that we wrestle with. I mean, if a city has adopted both, then I guess we have to accept either or. But I know that is something that the plumbing board has wrestled with much more deeply than we have on the air conditioning side. But you bring up a good point, Jerry.
Dave Yelovich. Hey, Bill. Jerry, that was a very good point. I hadn't thought about that. But Bill, is there a chance that I don't do commercial work, but in the IECC, I would imagine if there's references, they refer to the international mechanical code within that for any, when they push you back somewhere. So again, would that cause a conflict because you're adopting one code and number 5 refers you to this other code? It's muddy waters.
Well, yes, this Bill Weatherly again. It is something that we have to work through with both of the codes there. International Mechanical Code and the Uniform Mechanical Code do have a few conflicts. I don't my personal opinion is that they're not glaring and large conflicts on the air conditioning side, but there are some there, and it can be confusing. And so what I try to do is work through it. If I have that conflict, I've had that once, and if you're the way I had to see it in the past, if you're following one code and you followed it correctly and you've adopted both, then you're good. Uh, you know, that's the only way we can go now. Now, is it perfect? No, but until we change and go to one code suite, I think we've got that challenge.
Dolores Compion here. Mr. Jennings, you had your hand up?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Campion. I was just going to throw in a little additional information. The ACR statute actually requires us to adopt standards. I believe it states, as strict as those created by the UMC and the IMC. So by statute, we are required to adopt both codes, even though as I understand, even though I'm not as technically versed, that there may be some conflicts.
Dolores Compion, thank you, Mr. Jennings. So any other further discussion? Dolores Compion.
Go ahead.
So I think what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, board members and staff, that we're looking for a motion to adopt or to present the code update as written. And have we successfully had enough dialogue to agree to disagree or agree to remove item 5 or keep item 5? Is that correct?
Yep.
So, Mr. Campion, Mary Winston here. We are definitely looking for a motion or two. So you probably want to present them one at a time to make sure we and of course have a roll call vote to see where we are. Doug, you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but there is the proposed amendment on the agenda to adopt the 2018 versions of the applicable codes for the program with an effective date of January 1, 2021. And that is as drafted. And then that would be the first motion to vote on, and we can go from there. Does that sound good, Doug?
It does. It does.
Dolores Compion, I need a motion to accept the proposal as drafted, with 5 being in play. Do I have a motion?
This is Rob Singer. I make a motion to accept it as is, with 5 being in there, and adopting the rest of the 2018 codes.
Dolores Compion, do I have a second? Ms. Winston, did I hear that correctly? Did he say with or without? I think we're making a motion to do it with.
Yes, Mary Winston, we're making a motion with. That was Mr. Stanley's motion. And of course, for that motion, we need a second. And I saw Mr. Bittner's hand go up, but I didn't hear if he made a comment. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bittner.
No, I was going to second the motion.
Dolores Compion, we have a second. Ms. Dealey, will you take roll?
Yes, sir. Dolores Compion,
Yes.
Jerry Bittner,
Yes.
Robert Stanley,
Yes.
Flor Lujan,
Yes.
David Morris,
Yes.
and Dave Yelovic.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you, members. I would just like to, again, Doug Jennings, just like to remind you that we will do some additional work on our end to provide you with some more information. And we'll try to, I will try to work with Bill and other staff to identify any potential conflicts and try to talk those through with SECO so that we can have some better guidance for you moving forward. We knew that there were some complications. We'd certainly like to be able to give you better advice on how this will work in practice. Yes, Ms. Winston.
And Mary Winston and Doug, am I correct that this is going out now for public comment?
That is correct, yes.
Yes. So we have a vote to adopt as written, and this goes out for public comment in the register. And so now we have, what's that, 30 days for the public to present their arguments or their positions either way. And those positions and those public comments will come back to this body again for further discussion, as well as Doug and Bill reaching out and other staff members reaching out for more input as well. So this is a starting the ball rolling, so to speak, and we'll see from here. Okay. Mr. Compion?
Mr. Jennings, what I would like, this has nothing to do with this, but with SECO itself, are those open public meetings that possibly I could attend as a spectator? And if so, would you give me a heads up, and I might like to attend some of those.
Yes, sir. I'm seeing vigorous nodding from Mr. Gonzalez. So yes, we'll keep an eye on any of their meetings and keep you informed.
Dolores Compion, thank you. So we're going to move now to item G, staff reporting. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good morning, presiding officer, advisory board members. Thank you all for making the time to be here and conduct the business of the state. It's very important to us. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yep.
Nodding heads? Good. All right. So I am going to go to sharing my screen. I have the pleasure as the Deputy Executive Director to share our executive report. Joining me today as maybe color commentary, if I forget anything important, is also Ms. Christina Kaiser, who's also Deputy Executive Director. Brian now has the three-legged stool of support with deputies. Chairman Mike Itis Mendez, or former chair of the commission, Mike Itis Mendez, is our third Deputy Executive Director. So I'm going to share my screen because everything I'm going to be telling y'all today is something that I think is important for y'all and the public to know is on our website. So let me see if I can be successful in doing that. Give me just a moment. So y'all should see the ACR agenda, and now y'all should see the TDLR website. I can't see y'all's faces, so could someone tell me yes, they see the screen I am sharing?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mary. So the agency has been pretty proud of our responses to disasters such as hurricanes and tornadoes. We've got a lot of licensees, a lot of responsibilities, and having communications, providing relief has been something we've been able to take pride in and even develop rules to address these things. None of us were prepared for the pandemic and COVID-19, and this has taken it to a new level. I would offer that our agency has had to divide the approach that we've taken to responding to COVID-19 into two separate categories. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, even though there's a lot of information and logistics that go behind doing this. We've got an external response in which we've acted as a conduit for many different entities. The governor's office has their executive orders that they provide guidance to us on what's opening, what businesses are essential, all those things come up. But there's CDC, there's the DSHS, all these acronyms are going to be using, the federal government, the local governments. Everybody's got information that they've given out that we're trying to coordinate. And mind you, we're hearing this all at the same time that the public's hearing this. We have to gather all that information and hopefully put it out in a way that's coherent, that doesn't cause confusion, and corresponds to our statutory and rule authority as well. So this is the best effort that we've had, and I'm really very proud of staff for the efforts that have gone into making these updates available to the public. So if you go to our this is our main page on our website, you click on COVID-19 response, you're going to see all the information that we utilize, even internally. If I want to find out what our agency is doing and I haven't been involved in a particular meeting or a particular program discussion, this is where I go. So internally and externally, the public can go to this page and find that we've got the links that are very important for them to keep up with all the information that's coming from different sources. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, they give us guidance from the federal level. To Texas Department of State Health Services, they give us guidance that's more specific to the governor's Open Texas plan. On the right-hand side over here, you'll see all the governor's executive orders that have kind of run the gamut on opening a business, closing businesses, what was necessary and what we had to keep up with as we issue updates. I'm going to scroll down so you can see some of the updates that we've recently listed. So the latest and greatest, July 13th of 2020, we addressed continuing education requirements for offender education providers. We've done many of these kind of updates as things change, as the governor finds out additional information. Mind you, he's thinking of the entire state and more than just the licensing requirements of our agency. He's thinking about the health and safety issues. But as he puts out these executive orders, we have to be the conduit and see how that affects what our statutory authority is and what our rule authority is, and see if there's things that we need to pursue in way of relief. Where we have found ways to provide relief and coordinate with the governor's office, we have done so. You'll see July 8th, combative sports were paused. The use of face coverings for these businesses that were initially not considered essential according to the governor's executive order, they open at a time later. We had to put information out clarifying what those expectations would be, and we used guidance provided by the Open Texas plan that was on the governor's website, along with them listening to some of the input that we had. This work is ongoing. As y'all know, the COVID response and the things that happen with COVID, we're listening daily. We're making decisions on a weekly basis to try to get out to our licensees what the best information is to help them conduct their business, conduct their personal lives. You'll notice that I've got the beard a little bit thicker than normal. Normally we'd be a little bit more clean shaven in these times and days, but things have changed. People don't go to the grocery stores as often, and people don't necessarily get out of their house as often. We've had to accommodate those things as well. But this is the work that we've done. And like I said, I'm really proud of staff, in particular, our group that we have manning the social media responses and internally coming up with FAQs, our customer service division. They're all part of a group that on a daily basis, we meet to discuss the challenges of our public, the public that we serve, and the problems and concerns that they voice to us via questions that come in through the customer service division or the licensing division or enforcement division, whatever division they come through. We try to get together, discuss them, and put out information that's going to help guide our constituents and the customers that we serve so that they have the best information that we have to offer. So I offer you that information. This page right here is going to be where you and our public should go if they have any questions about the things that are going on with our program. Obviously, air conditioning was fortunate, if you like to look at it that way, to be able to stay in business as an essential service, but that's presented challenges of its own. We haven't had to put too many notices out specific to air conditioning, although the continuing education extensions that went into effect, those were substantial. You know, from March to June, a lot of these things came up, and we had to take some action to recognize that getting people together in groups for continuing education classes was going to be a little bit harder. Recognizing that there's lots of online classes out there, still the challenges of some are not the same as others, depending on where you're located in the state of Texas. These are things we had to take into consideration in some of the actions we took and the information we put out. That's what I have to share on the external. Let me talk about internally. I will tell you that actually, we put notice on our website regarding boiler inspections being temporarily suspended. We actually suspended inspections on a lot of our programs as the information was put out on how we keep health and safety together. We had to ramp up and get PPE for all of our staff to make sure we were going to be able to keep them safe in their duties going out to do inspections. So for a time period, especially when the numbers were up high, we weren't doing the inspections. We had backed off from those things and continued doing the work that we could do from the office and in many instances from home. Our agency had to do a full shift in March. Our executive leadership, listening to the governor's directive that if you can work from home, you should be working from home. We had to get our IT staff ramped up, get computers from the office to the homes, or some type of software that would allow us to use our own personal computers to tie into our licensing systems. That was no minor feat. It was amazing what our IT staff were able to accomplish, and even more amazing, all of our staff adjusting, just like all of you have adjusted to having virtual meetings and having to come into the office. Now, mind you, we have been working this entire time. Work has not stopped, but we have not been in the office in the same numbers that we've been in the past. In order to protect our staff, we have had to do rotations to do mail and open the mail and take care of the money situation. Those all have to be done in person because that's how we receive a lot of the applications that we get to process. But we've had to rotate, we've had to take temperatures, we've had to track staff as they go through the buildings to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And if we need to do contact tracing of staff, if they are affected or they come in contact with someone that tests positive, again, no major feat. I know that everybody's dealing with this. I just want to make sure y'all understand that while we care about all the things that are going on in this world, we care immensely about our staff, the ones that are doing the work to serve the public, and we have to do our due diligence to make sure that they have those face masks and that they actually have sanitizer everywhere at the doors, even going as far as putting little feet on the ground to make sure they're maintaining the 6-foot distance within our building. These are things we've had to accommodate. Our field staff, making sure that they have all the necessary equipment and not putting them in harm's way, especially in counties like Harris and Dallas, where there was some elevated numbers and there was basically danger situations we would be putting our staff in if we were to send them out to do inspections in the same numbers that we've done in the past. So an external and internal response is what we coordinated for COVID-19 to try to address all these new things that we're learning. This moment, COVID-19 period of time, has been a challenge. It has created opportunities for us to be resourceful. It brings out the best in you when you're challenged and you're having difficulty with coming up with answers. Again, statute and rule are what they are. We can't change those. But when relief was necessary or was some kind of accommodations were necessary, we coordinated with necessary state government, whether it's another agency or the governor's office, to figure out how we were going to accommodate. Telehealth was an important one for some of those health related programs, which wasn't necessarily on the books, but something that had to be come about because of the changes of the pandemic and how we had to change our thinking. Ms. Kaiser, that's all I was going to present on COVID-19. Are there any important points that you think I left out or need to bring up?
No, I think you're good, David.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So next on the agenda is to talk about the strategic plan. I'm going to go back so that, again, everybody can find the same information, even when I'm not on the screen talking to you. On our webpage, we try to keep the important stuff up on the top page. The strategic plan, I want to make sure y'all understand, it is very important to this agency. It just isn't in the top billing. COVID-19 kind of takes top billing, and our sunset report does, but it is still here. So I'm going to scroll down so you can see where to find it. It's under agency reports. So you have to scroll down just a little bit, not a whole bunch. Under agency reports, our strategic plan is posted under operational, or I'm sorry, organizational reports. This is a plan that every state agency must come up with. Every state agency is responsible for turning it in. I believe it was due on June 1st. So we're having to do the work for our strategic plan while COVID is going on. Again, the staff coming together to give the input to do what we do for strategic plan, phenomenal. But this is not just our plan. This is actually the plan that we go to the public. If y'all are familiar, if y'all have been around the agency for a time period, y'all know that we take this strategic planning process pretty seriously. We actually used to travel the state, going around and doing presentations, to ask the questions. If you were king or queen for a day, what would you change? If there was something we can do better, we wanted to hear about it. Instead of being able to do that and travel around the state, we actually had to do virtual interaction with the public. We held those sessions, but it was virtual. Brian, Francis, and I actually used Poll Everywhere software to try to gather all the input. We also put the survey on our website, as we've done in the past, to gather input on important questions that are going to affect our agency today and going forward. I'm going to scroll through some of the strategic plan. One of the questions that we asked, which was a really important, and you'll kind of see the theme in this particular strategic plan, is in regards to the pandemic, what can we do better? What is it you would have liked to have seen during the pandemic? Since this is our first experience with it, it was a prominent question, and you would not believe the feedback that we received. People really appreciating the fact that they can do things online. For those people that are unable to do things online, obviously there's a shortcoming, things that we can improve on. So we tried to put together a plan using the public's input and internal staff's input on what we do well and what we can do better. So I'm going to try not to scroll where it makes you crazy, but I want to get to some of the things that are important about this report. If executive staff wasn't here, if you weren't listening to a commission meeting or advisory board and you wanted to learn about our agency, our executive director said this is the report that you would go to. It explains who we are. You know, back in 2015, I believe we had like 24 or 25 programs that we oversee. Going into 2021, we're going to be having 40 programs with the addition of fuel motor quality and motorcycles and ATV safety. We're growing larger. Prominent in all of our strategic plans is what we believe as our mission and vision statements and our core values. That has driven this agency for years, so we're always proud to incorporate those things. Open and free communication, teamwork, all those things that make us who we are and really help the culture at TDLR. Talks about who we regulate, talking about the 24 businesses back in 2015 and the 40 programs we'll have. There's a list and a table of all the different programs. If you've forgotten, sometimes it's difficult to keep up because we have so many of them. An important point I'm going to bring up right here, how we do it. This is not just state employees and the state agency doing their work, being diligent about their work. It's about coordinating with others. We have a commission that oversees our agency. These commissioners actually guide us. They're looking at it. They actually get phone calls as well on each of the different programs, and they're asked questions, and we have to be responsive. They're not allowed to actually have a vested interest in any of our programs that we regulate, so it's difficult to find some of these people, but they have an interest, and they have dedicated themselves to helping guide this agency to get our work done. But most important, and I think because of the time y'all are spending here today, I wanted y'all to see this page. It has been incorporated in our past strategic plans. How we do our work, it cannot be done without the input we receive from advisory boards. The recommendations, the deliberation. Mr. Yelovich, today you brought up perhaps the dissenting opinion in an action discussion today, but as it was discussed, it's going to be posted out for public comment. There's going to be more opportunities for discussion and reviewing these things that are very important. And it's that level of not dissonance, but bringing to our attention the important things, the things that we really need to think about, the things that are going to make us do more work. We're going to have to go back and reach out to SECO and do a little bit more homework. That's what the advisory boards bring to our agency. And it's not just this one. We have many. We have 33 advisory boards. So kudos to Ms. Winston and all of her staff for the work that they do in keeping communications. Hopefully y'all are finding this virtual advisory board experience pleasant. At least you didn't have to travel in Austin traffic and come all together for a very short meeting and then have to drive back home in the traffic. Now we're doing business virtually. So I'm hoping that y'all are finding that it's beneficial. And again, being challenged in these times of the pandemic, I think we may have found a better way to conduct business, and this may be the standard going forward. I know it's become a standard in our daily workloads. I referenced the three legs of the stool. We've got Deputy Executive Director Mike Addis-Mendez, myself, and Christina Kaiser used to be the Executive Director for, the Director for Enforcement. I was the Director over RPM. Mike used to be former chair of the commission. We're all here to support Mr. Francis, which I know y'all are used to seeing his smiling face. We want to get him, keep him involved, but we want to give him the support he deserves and let him take some vacation every once in a while. Maybe. He's still working the late hours and staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning reviewing things. It's hard to keep up with the man. He's got so much energy. I'm going to scroll on down to some of the more important points, showing you our strategic plan. It's all important. We've got human trafficking listed in there because it's come up, and we've even got resources dedicated as a result of the legislative session. And hopefully this isn't going to drive y'all crazy that I'm scrolling so fast, but I do want to get to these pages. So, agency goals and action plan. We've got them enumerated for you. Fully implementing and administering the recommendations resulting from the sunset review process. I'm going to be going into that next. But the sunset process started last year, and these are people that rolled up their sleeves and dug down deep to give us an exception report, to tell us everything that we could be doing better. And we haven't had one in a long time because they kept on giving us programs, but we have embraced that process. There are things that they have challenged us on and told us we could do better. And you know what? They were right. So embracing the sunset review process, which is still ongoing. As far as their report, it's already been issued. We'll get to that detail a little bit later, but I wanted to let you know that part of our strategic plan is making sure to embrace the sunset recommendations and make sure we're listening to those that are telling us that we can do a better job, and how they're telling us we can do a better job. Improving efficiency, streamlining rules, decreasing regulatory burdens. That's something that has become a mantra here at TDLR. We have not forgotten it. It's still listed as number 2. Human trafficking and outreach effort to protect the public and safety, still there. Again, human trafficking is kind of a new one for us because we've got more resources. We took the lead because of our unique role as a licensing entity to be involved in some of these barber and cosmetology situations and massage school situations where we have the opportunity to identify possible human trafficking. So we've stepped up and been rewarded with the staff and resources to maybe do a better job in that aspect. But goal number 4 is probably one of the biggest ones and permeates our culture now and probably everybody's businesses, as positioned TDLR to respond effectively to the next pandemic and the next natural disaster. We've got rule packages and things that we've done and relief packages that we put out on our page, but I think we can be more effective and plan more effectively for the next pandemic. I know our executive office feels that we have a lot to learn from this pandemic time period. And so we're going to try to be better for it. And we're going to do our business in a way that accommodates for the next time that it happens. Those are the most important points I wanted to show. Continuing to streamline and improve administration of services for programs transferred to TDR. The biggest thing there is we're actually looking at a new licensing system. I've been at the agency for 24 years, and we've done little bits, smaller programs have gotten small bits of support in regards to IT, but it costs a lot of money. And it takes a lot of time to get into one licensing system. We've actually gotten funding for at least the beginning portion of a new licensing system that I think could be the legacy and the future of our agency. It's just started out. We're really got our sleeves rolled up to get that work done. But I'm hopeful, and we've got a great IT group heading it up, leading the charge. But again, our agency culture doesn't allow this to happen without everybody's input. Enforcement, finance, everybody's got to say and has to give input for this licensing system to succeed because it touches every division of our agency. And for the most part, we want to make it as easy as possible for the customers, the ones getting licenses. They shouldn't even need to talk to us. If we can make it streamlined enough, they'll be able to get all their licensing requirements taken care of online, payments done online. We've got that for some programs, but not all. These are the things that we want to accomplish, and we put it into our strat plan. So if you want to know what this agency has planned for now and in the future, this is where you go for those plans. Kaiser, have I forgotten anything there? Things that probably need to be highlighted?
No, I don't think so. I think the agency goals were the main focal point that I was concerned about.
Understood. All right, so I'm going to go back to our website one more time. Again, this is for the benefit of the public and our advisory board members. Y'all need to be able to find this information, even if David's not controlling the computer screen. I promise I'm not a control freak. I'm just trying to make sure everybody knows where the information is at. On our front page, at the very top right-hand corner, the Sunset Commission issues staff report on TDLR. That is where you click to get to some very important information. So it was about 17 years since our last sunset review because we kept on getting programs and they would postpone our sunset review. It is an important part of the process for all state agencies to determine if they continue to move forward as an agency, or programs underneath their responsibility continue to move forward or not. Some of the programs that we've inherited in the recent years have been a result of sunset reviews. Currently, we are under a limited scope review, so every program that we had under our responsibility prior to September 1st of 2016 is under review. That would include the ACR program. You can go and actually see the executive summary that was issued by the Sunset Commission. These are incredibly smart people. They are not here to tell us, hey, great job on y'all's growth and for taking care of those programs we sent to you a couple years back. That's not their job. Their job is to get in the nitty gritty, look at our numbers, look at our processes, and tell us what we could be doing better. I'm here to report, glad to report, that they have recommended to continue our agency for a few more years. That is the goal of every sunset review, or that's the agency's goal usually, is that we're doing a good enough job to keep going. But their actual report, and I'll scroll down through it, has issues that they identify where we can be doing things better. I'm going to stop at a couple of them and talk to you about it. These are important for the public to review. We are currently, we've gotten their report. We're responsible for providing them a response back, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Our executive director and our agency, actually Ms. Kaiser, helped prepare the response to the issues and recommendations that we received from Sunset. But they come up with things that we need to look at. I'm going to point out one to you that I think is important under issue 1, bullet number 3. I'll use my little cursor. Authorize TDLR to create interdisciplinary advisory boards to coordinate the expertise and input for similar industries. These are the kind of recommendations that can come from sunset reviews. Y'all might be a fan of these things. Y'all might think it's something that could help. But if it is discussed and it affects advisory boards because you're on an advisory board, you may want to participate in the discussion. They're actually still accepting public comments on their website. You can still provide them input. In August, we will be having some hearings. I'll go to those dates in just a second. And at September, we'll actually have decisions made by the Sunset Committee on all the feedback they've received from the actual Sunset group doing the research and doing the report, to the public comments. They're going to review all those things, and we received quite a few. Issue number 2, 15 occupational licenses are not necessary to protect the public. That's going to be a significant one for those that got identified in this report. I expect they have some concerns that their occupation was identified. This is not our report. This is Sunset's report, and it is not a done deal. This is what they're recommending. It still has to go through a legislative process. The Sunset recommendations would have to be adopted and go through both parts of the House in order for this to happen. But this is how the discussion moves forward. So there's still opportunities for all these license types to give their input. We're the administrators of statute and rule. So we don't take a side on any of this stuff. We have to be responsive, and we have to make sure we're listening to the points that the Sunset Committee has brought up and see where the statute ends up going. If it gets changed, where they propose to eliminate some of the programs or change or modify the programs in some way, these are things we're going to have to look at, and if they get passed into law, actually implement. If you'll notice issue number 3, regulating barber and cosmetology, they're proposing maybe to consolidate the barber and cosmetologist. So these are some big changes for us, being that cosmetology is one of the largest programs, is the largest program we oversee as far as numbers. Eliminating unnecessary, burdensome, and unfair regulations in regards to our driver training programs. They've actually identified other agencies that may be able to do a better job than us. Issue number 5, the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles could regulate used automotive parts recyclers more effectively. They put it out in print that TDLR is not the greatest thing since sliced bread. They put it out there that there may be others that can do as good a job, if not better, and they're proposing or recommending the transfer of UAPRs to the DMV. In my acronyms, my apologies. TDLR lacks, issue number 6, TDLR lacks a data-driven, risk-based strategy to guide regulatory functions and maximize efficiency. Now, this is one that really hit our agency because we have prided ourselves on using numbers and data to drive our efforts, determine where we're going to allocate our resources and put our efforts for outreach, for enforcement, for inspections, all those things. When we read this, it kind of hits you in the heart, and you're going, oh man, I thought we were doing a great job. But the items that they point out, they were actually valid. When we read through the details, we could do a better job. It's not that we're doing a bad job, but we can do better. And most people, most companies, most businesses, most state agencies can do a better job. It's all in how you understand the points that are being presented to you and embrace them. And we've chosen to embrace the points they bring up. We can do a better job, and we're going to take that to heart and listen to them. The last issue that they brought up is key elements of our statute and rules do not conform to common regulatory standards. Sunset actually does reviews of all state agencies, so they've gotten some expertise on what state agencies should look like as far as regulatory Title 8 type agencies, regulatory agencies, and there should be some common points of interest or common processes. They noticed in our statute and in our rules that maybe we didn't have some of that. So in issue 7, they're actually identifying ways that they may be able to help us with statutory changes, or that we may be able to help ourselves with rule changes going forward. So that's what I want. That was such a brief summary for all the work that went into this. This started since last year. And mind you, this is the limited scope review. We still have other programs that are actually subject to another sunset review right after this one's done going forward for all those programs that were transferred to us after September 1, 2016. But I want to take you back to the page that shows you the dates because it's critical. The public knows that this is not finished. The process has started. We're in the deep part, but you need to know where the process goes from here. So on my screen, I see a staff member. I need to move their screen so I can get to it. Let me move this down. There you go. So from August 19th to August 20th, usually the 19th is when you hear public testimony. That's when, if you have any interest in these programs or any of the issues, you want to add something to it, that's where you would go to provide that input. The public's invited. Then we have decision making in September 23rd and 24th. That's when the actual legislative bodies, both the representative side and the Senate side, get together and hear out all the public comments and review all those things. I want to point this out to you. So when we got our report, I conveyed to you that sometimes we had to bite our tongues and listen to what they're telling us because we take pride in what we're doing. Mr. Francis had to come together, bring staff together and provide a response to all those issues that they found and explain to them how we're going to fix them, or recognizing, you know what, y'all brought up some good issues and this is what we're going to do to try to make those better. So Brian Francis has the very first response to the report that was issued. But as you scroll down, you're going to see hundreds. I think we've gotten close to the 1,000 mark maybe on comments, but these are all the comments received from across the state from different individuals that have taken interest. That is still available to the public and is a very important part of this process because all of these comments can be considered when they're looking at our agency and determining whether or not they're going to move forward with that recommendation to continue our agency for another 12 years. So I talked a lot and I want to be respectful of your time. Ms. Kaiser, have I forgotten anything? Do I need to add anything of specific mention?
I would just add a few remarks if that's okay, David.
Of course.
As part of the sunset process, as you read through the report, you'll see that there are management action recommendations that have been made by Sunset, and then there are statute change recommendations. And so all of those are still in a state of being incomplete right now. They are just recommendations at this point. And at that decision meeting that David talked about, that's going to happen in September, the Sunset Commission will meet and vote on those things, and they'll vote. So if they adopt those recommendations, then at that point, those management action recommendations are in play, and they're saying to the agency, these are things that don't require a change in the law. They require some change in your process, and agency, do this. We recommend that you do this. And similarly, if they vote to adopt the statute change recommendations, then what follows from that is a bill gets created and filed in the next legislative session, and then that bill has to go through the full legislative process and be adopted. So kind of two tracks happening there. The sunset bill, of course, has to survive the legislative session intact before those things actually become effective. So just wanted to underscore one thing David said, that this is a long process and there are a lot of steps still to go before any of this becomes effective. and there are still many more opportunities for the public to affect the outcome, especially on the statutory side. Now, on the management action part of it, I will tell you that we are already starting to take action on some of those. Our boss, Mr. Francis, appointed a group of us that includes me to jump on some of those management actions. You know, the things that Sunset has recommended that we already agree with it. We already think it's a good idea. There's no reason to wait. So we've actually already made some steps on getting started on some of those management actions. And that team likewise is that's going to be a long game. We're going to be in this for a couple of years probably before we get to the point, because then even if some of those statute recommendations get adopted by the legislature, then there will be things that we have to do at the agency level to implement those. So the management action group will still. I did want to just mention one of the management actions, one of the early quick items that we have completed already that it would be of interest to you. One of the recommendations, it came under issue 7, the very last one. There was a recommendation that the agency should publish enforcement related statistics on the website for each of its programs. And so we have actually done that. Actually, your program, air conditioning and refrigeration, was the first program where we put anything on the website. And so on your page, when you go to the agency's main website and then you move to the air conditioning program page, on the right-hand side, there are a list of buttons that you can click, and there is one that speaks about enforcement. And I can try to do David's thing and share the screen, and let me see if I can successfully do this. You should be seeing the TDLR webpage now. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So this is the main web page. When you go under here and you click on air conditioning and refrigeration contractors, you go to their page. And then this is the column of stuff that I'm talking about over here on the right-hand side. There's one button here that says complaints and enforcement. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor kind of moving in that area, but if you click on that, then there are some choices underneath. And the third choice there now is complaint statistics. And then this is the information that we've posted. This is currently the data for fiscal year 2019, and we will update this each year. Our plan right now, anyway, is to update this yearly. A lot of this is stuff that you folks have already seen in your reports for the advisory board, but there was a list of, I don't know, 12 or 15 things that Sunset specifically wanted us to include, and so we've plumped up statistics that we already had put together and added a few more things in there. So that's available. It will be completed for all of our programs. I'm going to unshare. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. I'm not sure how to unshare now. David?
Go
Oh,
up
here
to
we
the
go.
top.
Here we go.
Go up to
I
the
got
top of the screen. Okay, cool.
Got it.
Ms.
Thank
Kaiser,
you.
thank you for that color commentary. I appreciate that, and I really like seeing those enforcement numbers. As you know, we have the meeting was shortened so we could take care of business. You didn't have all the other reports that you would normally get from the enforcement division with all the enforcement statistics from RPM that shows up and talks about the outreach. We'll probably be getting back to those. These few meetings we've been having kind of been our test ground. Or can we conduct virtual meetings? Can we conduct them successfully and get taken care of the business that needs to be taken care of? So I expect eventually we'll get back to the meetings that include full reports as necessary with everybody participating as y'all have today. That's all we had for the executive report. Again, I appreciate y'all's time. I really feel honored to continue being a public servant and have you participate, because today everybody spoke up. Everybody's opinion meant something in the discussion. And so just again, thank you. Kudos to y'all for participating, making yourselves available for virtual, and I'm available to answer any questions if you have them.
Dolores Compion, board members, any questions? for Mr. Gonzalez and the team? Okay, Dolores Compion. Then we move on. Thank you, team members there for providing that report. There was a little bit of anxiety there as we were going through any sunset review as far as, our longevity and the things that we have to do, right? So it looked like everybody fared well, and I actually read the report already. And so there was some
We
good
were
things.
David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. We're feeling that anxiety too. Remember, we're not done yet. This is just the report that's been issued. There's still some actions need to be taken. So we're feeling that anxiety, but like I said, we've embraced the process. Appreciate y'all taking the time. That was a lot for me to convey in one bit. Hopefully y'all remember where it's at on our webpage and y'all can spend some more time because it's a good read. Definitely a good read.
Dolores Compion. So we move on to item H. Any recommendations for any agenda items for our next meeting? I actually have a request. Don't know if it falls within our silo, so you can probably give me an answer today if it's can be put in the meeting. I've always get questions on our extended warranty type programs, their licensing requirements, and I probably should know a little bit about this already, but if a staff member can provide us a report on how we potentially govern, I know it may fall into the insurance piece. I'm trying to be diplomatic here and not step over any boundaries where, homeowners or consumers buy extended warranties for their air conditioning. And how does that interrelate with us? How does the guidelines? Is there any licensing requirements? Things of that nature. Just more of a tutorial if someone can provide that for the members or for me in our next meeting.
This is Mary Winston. They're known at TDLR as service contracts. So there are things such as extended warranties, but let me work with some staff and try to get some information on that. I think I know what you're looking for. If not, I will be in contact. So if this can be applicable to this board, we will definitely put it on the agenda. If it's something more informational, we will provide the information. So thank you.
Dolores Compion, thank you. Any other agenda items that any of the board members may have, please feel free.
David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. Obviously, we'll have the rules back on there with the comments that we received. So that will definitely be on there and anything else that the board members would come up with.
Dolores Compion, if there's no other agenda item recommendations for our next meeting, we move on to item I, discussion time and location of our next meeting. I think with this successful WebEx meeting here, I think that should probably have one every week. But that's just we can get some practice in. But I know that's not feasible. So add a little humor there with some anxiety. So any recommendations for our next meeting, or you just kind of want to hold the audience at a later date?
Mr. Compion, this is Doug Jennings, Assistant General Counsel. Right now on our rulemaking timeline, we have early October slated as the next meeting date. And so we don't have to decide on a date right now. If it's okay with you, we'd like to poll the members and consult our internal calendar and try to make it early October if possible.
Dolores Compion, early October sounds good to me. So with that said, we can now move on to item J, adjournment. So here's where I kind of lost my way here and had a meeting in a while. So this is where I asked for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Sure.
I'd like the motion to adjourn the meeting.
It's Rob Stanley, and I make a second.
Ms. Dealey, will you
Call us. I think a voice vote would go over well.
Dolores Compion here. I think we follow the standard protocol. Do we take roll? Ms. Deely, will you take roll or somebody take roll?
Sure. Dolores Compion,
Yes.
Jerry Bittner,
Yes.
Robert Stanley,
Yes.
Flor Lujan,
Yes.
David Morris,
Yes.
and Dave Yelovic.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes. Mr. Compion, can you announce a time, please?
Dolores Compion, the time is 11:48 according to my little laptop here. So with that said, meeting adjourned. I do want to make a short little comment. Thank each and every one of you for all the hard work and getting me through my anxiety this morning, even jumping on the meeting. So, but with that said, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all the effort. I know that it doesn't go unnoticed, and I have a lot of things to do with 30-something boards to deal with. So thank you so much and all the hard work that y'all do every day.